Hi guys, Matthew from Mario Pilgrim here. In a rather crap garage, a little tidying out my parents' place. But I thought, take this chance, and I got a moment, to talk about something that cropped up when studying one of my videos very recently. It was the one about porn versus the Bible, where the general argument was about whether the passages in the Bible were more devastating to a sexual relationship than any form of pornography. However, when I was taking on the information they gave me, taking on the passages and doing my research into it, you know what the person who was trying to push it was doing? He was telling me to continue debating. So debate it straight ahead. I normally don't debate things like that on the forums directly because it's a waste of time and I don't really need to be spending hours typing out everything that I need to do in a video and then share later on. Videos are generally easier to condense. Typing isn't. Don't know how quick it is reading it. So instead I suggested an alternative debate, something which was actually very much in line with the whole debate. That being whether computer games had the tendency to inspire violence in young children. This may seem completely deflective, but realistically when you think about it, if you're talking about things that have influence on people, you have to consider others, such as, well, video games. Do they have influence? Can they indeed inspire violence? In which case you have to accept that the Bible could potentially inspire, and so could pornography. It's just the same thing. So the core of it, whilst I was focusing entirely on the Bible and versus porn, is covered in the main video. This will cover what I was actually doing. Was I deflecting, or was I simply trying to guide him to a different debate because I didn't have time to focus on both of them at the same time? He accused me of deflecting. Now, what is deflecting? Well, many people say it's simply a way of avoiding the topic and attacking another angle, talking about something else. And I suppose in a way I was. But does that make it bad? Well, interestingly enough, we can again, as you normally expect from being in here, test it out using weapons. Because deflecting is a common form of attack, or common form of defence rather, in swordsmanship. For example, if someone has a very strong forward stance, with this spear for example, don't know if you can see it from that angle, my best move would be to clear it out of the way, knock it aside so I can come in. But what if he has a very strong stance? Say he's locked into plough. That means I need to either properly hit it, properly address the point to knock it out of the way before I come in, or I need to come at a different angle. But if he's properly locked into that stance, it will keep tracking me on it. So I can't shift around without simply redirecting it. What that deflection would look like is not me deflecting the weapon away, it would be sort of me connecting the weapon and using that as momentum to deflect myself away. Hopefully I'm still in shot. So then I'm in a better position to land a strike, which is tangential but not completely offline. Is that always a good thing? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But as ever, it's how you respond to it that makes a difference. If I was to deflect a weapon to the side, as I'm deflecting myself, I'm essentially creating a bigger gap so I can come in. If they were quick, they would simply take a step back and meet me on that line. So say they did that, they deflected me off to the side, I would step back, meet them on that same line. However, what many people try and do is try to reset the line, as it were. Tell me, no, get back over here so I can stab you. Because they're very confident in that position. But in most debates and in most sword fights as well, you need to be competent in as many areas as possible. There's no point being very good at one or two moves and then spamming them. In fact, there's a classic move known as the Zwerkopter, which is used using the Zwerkhowl, the overhead cut, constantly to completely mess up an opponent's fighting rhythm. You see that a lot in some Star Wars media, certainly in, Revenge of the Sith, where they do that move constantly. That does set up good rhythms, but it also creates obvious gaps. So if you're really throwing a Zwerkhowl in this position, they'll just land a strike. They've got the longer range. If you're very good at throwing this cut, that's good. But then you need to focus on things that you're not so good at. And then you need to adjust it so you can fit all of them in to your fight. There's no point being very good at one thing and saying, this is the only way that someone can fight me. This is the only way someone can handle me. Because that's not the way fighting works. And debates are very much the same. If you're going to have someone attack you from a different line that is tangential to the one that you're talking about and actually related, then it's worthwhile considering that argument as well. Is there something to always do? Is deflecting always a good thing? No. Because, again, you need to be competent against all things. So if that person is constantly locking in to that line, you need to take time to study that, work on it, and get good at dealing with it properly. By striking aside, taking the point off you, and then coming in. As you can see, it's so offline. You can do it in so many different ways, with the vertical, horizontal, upwards, downwards, and so many ways. But you need to study it before you know which one is going to be most effective. You come in all guns blazing first off, you're not going to be very effective. So, is there really a bad reason to use deflection? There is, if you're so terrible at facing a point that it's obvious. But does that mean that person has the right to lock in and remain on that point and say that people are cheating or not being sportsmanlike or even debating properly if they're facing that point and then changing to attack another? No. They're not shifting the goalposts. They are aiming from the corner. If you're not willing to adjust your own angle to meet them, then clearly you are not in a good position to debate. Constantly deflecting, again, that's a bad thing. But locking in and holding onto a point that clearly is being developed on or worked with behind the scenes is unfortunately like being in a watchtower. You can stand there, you can be solidly bound in one place, and if you're going to be locked in one place, it's easy for someone to come underneath, cut the floor out from underneath you, and you will drop. Be willing to move to address their point, because otherwise you're not respecting the point. And if they seem to be constantly disrespecting yours, then perhaps they're just not able to understand the purpose of the argument. There are always two sides to the same coin. Two sides to the same story, people say. But when you understand how one will respond and why one should be willing to adjust their position to focus on the point they are aiming, you see so many things that they don't. And in fact, it could lead to a productive debate, not one where they're simply saying, "Why did you change position? I'm here, stay on my point." You may say, this will never happen with atheists. I've seen it happen constantly. If I can, I'll put some up. But you'll be amazed how often atheists lock into a position, or even later on, deflect constantly, only to show they've only got one argument and they're constantly spamming it to little to no effect. So learn when a point is worthwhile addressing, learn when you can address it and how you're going to address it, and learn when to deflect at the right moment. So you can come in for an argument that is not completely out of left field, but one that is related. So they need to address and be ready. Don't lock yourself into a position where you've only got one argument. And if they don't accept it, then you end up in a stalemate. Stay safe, friends, and God be with you.